The Loneliest Creatures in the World by toucheslikethesun, Part 2. Chuuya learns things faster than Dazai expects, which makes him realize that the chibi is in fact intelligent, more so than most people, but of course not the way Dazai is. Nobody is. He knows he isn't the only one with a mind as cursed as his in the entire world. The probability is too small for that. But he has never met anyone like himself, and sometimes it feels that way. Like he is the only one that sees through life the way he does, the artificiality and pointlessness of it, sees the probability of every outcome possible, analyzes things faster than he can breathe, like he is the only one whose mind never stops working in 100 different directions. The only one who can't sleep until the sun sheds its first light onto the world, because his mind just won't go quiet. The chibi is certainly the closest thing to it. It is certainly fascinating to see him pick up 10 times more information and skills than most people would in the short amount of time he does. He learns enough language to communicate in 2 weeks, though his pronunciation and syllables are collapsed, like that of one still learning to speak. But it's enough to understand him, or so it is for Dazai anyway. Does Chuuya like this world so far? Sometimes when Dazai sees other people, blissfully ignorant and normal and effortless, he wants to borrow their consciousness for a moment, to be inside their mind and see life through their eyes, the value of it, the reasons why it's worth staying. Even if there aren't any, it must be nice. The illusion of it. He thinks it's something Chuuya seems to understand, the value of life and the world or whatever, though it's a different matter, a far more interesting matter for sure. Chuuya's eyes, the eyes he sees this world and life through, are like that of a newborn baby who is conscious enough to experience it all for the very first time. Of course, it's not all positive, exactly. Like those newborn babies, it's easy for the world to get overwhelming and overstimulating and far too big for Chuuya. The first time they walked through a crowd was awful, because Chuuya was hyperventilating by the end of it, and didn't go out to the park for a week after. Dazai tries to make sure where they are is never too noisy when they are outside, and they don't stay longer than an hour or 2 before coming back to the abandoned house. Chuuya hums, on the edge of a pleasant sleep. Dazai wishes he could see the world through his eyes. What does Chuuya like about it? Chuuya seems to wake up a little, his eyes opening slightly. I like you, Chuuya mumbles, and Dazai's heart stops for a few seconds. Chuuya doesn't seem to notice, keeps going, and it takes Dazai a few times to blink past the strange tightness in his chest and listen to the rest. Dazai's mind clearing the pronunciations of certain syllables and consonants and vowels still being learned. Dogs and cats. I like the birds. I like the grass, and I like the trees. The sun when it's not too hot. I like the moon. I like people when they smile at me and give me food. Well, what does Chuuya not like is a better question. Dazai supposes he somewhat expected this answer from someone who's new to everything. Why? Let me see the world with wonder through your eyes. Maybe I will find a reason to live through them. Like, Chuuya says, face scrunched up as he is deeply concentrating on how to say what he wants. Like you teach me things, and talk to me and bring me food, and you have pretty eyes. And when dogs are happy when you pet them, and their fur is soft, when cats cuddle your legs, it's cool that birds can fly so high. Chuuya's still going on, but, well, frankly Dazai is getting bored, and he does not understand why any of those things are nice. He likes cats, at least, but that's about it. He understands cognitively why birds flying is interesting to someone who is seeing most living creatures on the ground. But he's fairly certain it won't be as cool once Chuuya learns he can fly even higher than them if he manages to figure out how to control gravity. He tries to imagine what the world would look like if he saw it for the first time. but the bleakness and lackluster and numb feeling sticks to his thoughts and mind, and everything is still dull and boring. And half of his mind is still too stuck on, I like you, and you have pretty eyes, for some reason. People do nice things, even if they never saw me before, so I like them. Brings Dazai back. This is not Dazai's experience with people, who mostly tended to ignore him when he was a child, until he learned to figure out what makes people tick. He is certain a big part of why it comes so easily to Chuuya is because Chuuya is beautiful, even at his worst state. But only the park people, not the lab people. Dazai's eyes drift to the scar on his throat, a thick line across the very front, right below his Adam's apple. The same scars that are on Chuuya's wrists, down the line of his sternum, on the back of his neck, and he has been branded in small letters, A5158. The skin raised like a thick burn scar, a lifetime scar. Dazai saw it all the first day he was giving his dog a sponge bath after submerging him in the Yokohama River to clean off the black liquid, cataloging each scar. Which was a bad idea that was necessary, because apparently Chuuya had fears about drowning, indicative of something in his past, considering he did not seem to even know what water was. His fingers twitch, a strange urge to touch those scars again. They look painful. Dazai doesn't like pain. He can't remember most of his early childhood, but the scars on his own body, under the bandages, have always been there too. Like Chuuya, he doesn't have the memories of how they were made on him. Is there anything Chuuya remembers of the lab people? Chuuya's eyes are now fully open, staring at the ceiling. Even the thought of them seems to make him feel something visceral. Once Chuuya saw a syringe on the ground, most likely for drugs, and froze, hyperventilating by the time they got back to their abandoned house. Chuuya also doesn't like the dark, so they always have a light on. What did they do to you? Chuuya shakes his head. Maybe the chibi remembers bits and pieces. There's a long silence. I don't think I existed. Clearly Chibi did, Dazai says, because it's only logical, not really even a reassurance. Why else would he be so scared of syringes and lab people? It's only that he doesn't remember all those years of his life, but it seems that they're still in there, somewhere. Chuuya's eyes are on the ceiling, still wide. Dazai can't tell if it's fear or a kind of relief at perhaps being a person like the others, that he was once a small child too, like the ones he sees at the park, that he did exist. Dazai knows people fear it, the non-existence, the reason they fear death. But to Dazai it seems somewhat peaceful, like being asleep and never waking up. It seems like an escape. If only most ways to get there didn't seem to be so full of pain. You think so? Mm-hmm. That night, like most nights, Dazai did not sleep, wide awake beside Chuuya with his hands on his abdomen, his brain running a mile a second in 100 different clear directions. It never goes quiet. It never stops. He is there to hear the first strangled noise that comes from Chuuya in his sleep, the twist of his face, the furrow of his brows as he squirms, arms spread out, bare feet moving on weak thrashes. He sleeps like that, broadly, comfortably, taking up too much space. He likes to sleep, too. What do you dream about? Dazai once asked, curious as to what a mind like his dreams about, intelligent but unknowledgeable. Chuuya stared at him, blankly in confusion. Ah, right, I should explain. But Chuuya did not know anything about what goes where. When he sleeps, he just sleeps and then wakes up, as if it's night, and after a very long blink it's day. And so this is unexpected at first. It seems Chuuya is having a nightmare. It starts with hitched breaths, then heaves and gasps of pure terror. And then he's screaming, high and loud, thrashing violently against whatever is holding him down in his dream. His back arches up. Dazai's up and on his elbow in a few heartbeats. Once the initial shock wears off and he's holding him down by the shoulders, which makes the thrashing and screaming and gasps even worse, but it can't be helped. They sleep on the floor, and it would hurt and leave bruises tomorrow morning if Chuuya keeps throwing himself around like this. He's still frail enough he might break something. Chuuya! Chuuya, wake up! Dazai wraps his arms around him to hold him still and tight and off the floor, as Chuuya begins to dry heave and cry hysterically in his sleep, shoving and arching against his chest, his feet going wild against the ground beneath him. Dazai feels one bony knee kick him in the gut. Chuuya! Chibi, open your eyes! With a gasping sob, his eyes fly open, wide and frozen upon the ceiling and glistening in the moonlight, shaking violently with his mouth open and still crying, tears streaming down the corners of his eyes. The stunned shock and horror on his face is something beyond comprehension, beyond bearable. Chuuya was dreaming, Dazai tells him, his voice quiet and gentler than he means to be, almost a whisper as if anything louder would make Chuuya bolt like a spooked animal. Chuuya was having a very bad dream. What did he see? Chuuya does not say anything. He just stares up with the same stunned shell shock and horror, white as death and mouth open and shaking awfully. Dazai is still holding him so tightly he can feel his heart hammering too fast and hard against his own chest. So fast he thinks it could have killed another person, could kill him with how fragile and weak his small body still seems to be. I don't remember, is what Chuuya whispers, after a very long time. The mind has many defense mechanisms. Dazai knows this. Among them is repression. Memories that are so terrifying and painful, your mind buries it deep until you can't remember any of it. But still it shows up anyway, one way or another. Sometimes it's in small ways, trickling into your everyday life. Other times it bursts out, all against your will. The horror and shell shock that leaves Chuuya trembling and frozen wears off eventually. Dazai couldn't tell you why he never quite let go of him until he saw the focus come back into Chuuya's wet eyes, until he was turning them to look into Dazai's too close face. Then, of course, Chuuya seems to become aware of the way he is being held. Then, of course, Dazai remembers he should let go, and tries to, until there's a grip on his chest of his shirt pulling him closer, and their foreheads and noses are together in the dim lights. His other hand holding Dazai's arm to himself, and Chuuya's face is confused and desperate, as if he can't understand what he is feeling. Dazai doesn't know what he himself is feeling either, this hunger for more, under his skin. The way his mind is hyper-focused on the warmth of Chuuya's body, the soft skin and bony angles. The urge to just melt against the other body. He wonders if this is what Chuuya is also feeling, which makes it less awful and less embarrassing. Weak. There's a small whisper of, "Don't let go." The hunger under his skin is strong, and Dazai can't remember ever being touched this way, or touching anyone this way, even when other people touched him in any way at all. He felt his skin crawl, the urge to break their fingers for it. But this is different. This feels different. Dazai lays back down beside Chuuya, shifting against the ground to make himself comfortable. Chuuya also shifts around so he is on his side, his face towards Dazai and his eyes on his face, slightly wide and too young, and his breath somewhat erratic and shallow in a new way. The terror has long since left his body. It's starting to get cold. The first of the winter chills in the air, and Chuuya's body is so thin that it doesn't generate enough heat on its own, so Dazai has stolen many blankets to cover him up. Maybe he should get someone to give him a double bed mattress for free soon. Doesn't know why it didn't occur to him. A lot of things have started to occur to him more, he supposes, since Chuuya. Things he didn't think about when it was just him. He hardly cared or remembered to eat most days. Now Chuuya would leave leftovers that Dazai eats, because he supposes he should eat something if he's going to be able to take care of his dog. It's all in the simple things. Even things like the way he crossed roads now. Dazai never bothered to be careful before, would just go past and hope he'd get hit, but instead cars would swerve or abruptly brake, honking and cussing at him. But now he has the chibi with him, and the chibi still doesn't know how to do that. Dazai is cautious too. He holds his hands as they cross the road, makes sure all the vehicles pass first, because Chuuya is often too busy looking around him at everything. Dazai adjusts the blankets to cover up Chuuya's shoulder, some strange ache and tenderness under his skin and in his chest making him. There's something about the silence, and Chuuya's eyes on him, sea blue lit in the lantern light from the corner, coloring them a faint yellow. There's something about just the two of them in this abandoned building. Nothing matters but us. He watches Chuuya fall asleep, slow and soft in small bits. He is so beautiful, and he's mine, all mine. I'm the first person he smiled at. I'm the first person who said his name. I'm the first person who's held him like this. He's mine. He will always be mine now, after these things. Dazai thinks for a moment that he might never get to feel these things, or see the world the way most people do, or find a reason to live. But he can live for this, for him, for this boy. He does not care about birds, or parks, or trees, or people. He does not feel all that much when he sees the sunrise or sunset, or the stars or the moon. He does not like dogs or children. He does not like the world. But he likes Chuuya. He likes the way Chuuya looks when he's looking at all these things. He likes the way Chuuya looks even when he's just falling asleep, and the way he feels. He feels so human in his arms, his skin too soft and warm over his bones, the heat of him seeping into Dazai. His mind has gone quiet. He's so beautiful, and he's mine, all mine. Dazai actually manages to sleep well that night. When he wakes up, Chuuya is even closer to him, burrowed deep against him. He has a leg thrown over Dazai's waist and forehead and nose pressed into his, the sleepy curl of his hands against Dazai's chest. His gray sweatshirt with a slug on the center is oversized on him, to accommodate an increasing weight eventually, almost swallowing him whole. The sleeves are too long so they come up to his palms, trapping under his loosely folded fingers. Dazai can feel his hot breath on him, smell it too, unfortunately, with Chuuya's mouth parted slightly, a little drool on the corner of his chin. But for some reason he doesn't move. He doesn't want to. He just lightly nudges Chuuya's chin up with a knuckle so his mouth closes, and he finds himself staring at him in the daylight streaming through the window, cutting shards of bright yellow across their bodies and faces. It's silent in this deserted part of Yokohama, but for the morning birds chirping outside. Chuuya is truly beautiful, the kind of beautiful you can stare at for hours. Dazai has gone to art museums and never fully understand why people stand and stare at paintings, but now he thinks that maybe it's because it feels something like this. The brush of his knuckles under Chuuya's chin seems to be the thing to stir him awake. Dazai's hand lowers slightly, hesitant for some reason now that he is about to be perceived. Chuuya's eyes open, the first thing they land on, as always every morning, being Dazai's face. It's a different reaction, though, than usual, because Chuuya, one eye half open and swollen and the other pinched shut, gives him a sleepy and soft smile, before he moves over even closer with his thin arms raised and wraps them tightly around Dazai's neck, cheek squeezing to his. Dazai's heart clenches at the affection and warmth of the gesture, beating wildly against his sternum. After a long moment, when he thinks Chuuya might have fallen back asleep against him, Dazai's arm comes up around him, first his tiny waist, then across his pointy shoulder blades. He can feel their hearts beating against each other's chests, rising and falling with each breath. His own too fast like a bird's wings, Chuuya's slow and sweet. The problem is that Chibi is too cute and pretty, and sometimes Dazai just doesn't know what he's supposed to do with these feelings. So he just... Chuuya's red hair has grown out a little, enough that Dazai got a hairband for him. He combs out the many knots in his hair and makes a small ponytail out of it, and then, staring at it with wide, unbandaged eye, and a small, squinched, tempted smile, his hand twitching with the urge, his brain writhing around in a skull for the need to bother Chuuya, promptly pulls on it hard enough that it startles Chuuya, hand shooting up with a yelp. "Dazai!" Chuuya shrieks, fists hitting Dazai's chest. They're weak punches, since Chuuya's still starting to gain the weight he needs. Dazai supposes he should be glad he can't use gravity on him. Dazai laughs and dodges him, catching his wrists lightly. "Bastard!" Chuuya yells at him. A word he heard from someone in a road rage. He likely knew it before, too, depending on how old he was when he was taken away. But sometimes it seems that the events around him are what resurfaces knowledge in certain aspects of vocabulary or language, a particular word or phrase. Dazai is somewhat startled for a second, hearing him cuss like that, before he starts laughing again, until his eyes water, folding at the abdomen with his hands clutching it. It's certainly a more entertaining shift from the chibi's usual growls and aggressive noises, turning into a high screech towards the end. Chuuya stopped hitting him, and now is just staring at him. Dazai's laughter is still bubbling out of him, now beginning to quiet, a lingering grin left behind, though even that fades when Chuuya's eyes on him persist. "What?" Dazai asks, somehow managing to keep the discomfort out of his face and voice at the way Chuuya is looking at him. It doesn't seem bad, but generally bad looks don't tend to phase Dazai out much either. It's just that he felt like he gave a very big secret away, laughing the way he did. He can't remember the last time he laughed this hard, laughed at all, not without being forced for some purpose, to charm someone into giving him something or get out of a tricky situation. The stare is just intense and very prolonged, and full of something that seems to be a lot like wonder or fascination. He smirks. "Does Chuuya think I'm pretty?" "I've never heard you laugh," Chuuya says. When he speaks, it's with a stilt, a bit drawn out, as if he has to exert a bit of conscious effort to shape his words. His lips quirk a slight smile. Dazai has learned that the chibi, for all the angry chibiness of him, seems to forget about things pretty fast. "I like that. I like the sound and the way you look." Dazai flushes red and hot, but he clears his throat and keeps his face straight. Chuuya should really learn to filter his thoughts. You can't just say everything you feel all the time. He pretends he doesn't think about it for hours after.